Hey guys, welcome back to this week's pull here on Comic Relief Cast. I'm your host Jake.
And I'm Josh. Hey Jake, got a cool question for you.
Is it about the comics we're about to read?
No, it's actually about how was your weekend.
Dude, we got...
What are we reading?
Just so people know, we got snowed in on Saturday. But what we are reading this week, obviously if you are seeing the title of this video, you are clicking on the Marvel segment for this week, coming out on the 16th. It is Tuesday that we're recording this, but what we're going over today is Black Widow number 1, Ironheart number 2, Venom number 10, Conan the Barbarian number 2, Marvel Comics Presents number 1, Star Wars Age of Republic Special number 1, Fantastic Four number 6, and the New Invaders number 1. And getting right into it is Black Widow number 1 by the creative team of, well, it's Clayton Crane on the cover, but the writer's Jen Sylvia Saska, and the artist is Flaviano. So what did you think about this one, Josh?
It wasn't as bad as what I was thinking it was going to be, but it's a Black Widow solo run is really not my cup of tea, anyways. But for the most part, I mean, it was entertaining of a book. I mean, there's really no big complaints on it. It's like I've been saying a lot lately, it wasn't bad and it wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, I like this book more than I thought I would. I kind of judge this book by its cover with the Clayton Crane. Not Clayton Crane's best stuff. I think his best stuff is usually when he's doing like a symbiote or something, or Spider-Man. But what I liked about this book is, one, it does tie into the Marvel Universe. It does reference things like Secret Empire, what's going on with Captain America. There's a little team up at the beginning of the book, but then later on, Black Widow gets to kind of do her own solo thing, and it gets to kind of take on the darker corners of the Marvel Universe, things that probably a little bit more realistic in terms of real world problems, and I kind of like that idea. It is her being a spy, it is her, taking down these criminals, and they're kind of, sounds like they're kind of trafficking in human children and stuff like that. So I like that idea. I think that is something that is well suited for a Black Widow book, but it's also not something that I was, taken aback by in the sense that, wow, this was great. It was good. It was a decent little book.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good little issue one. I think having Cap there in the beginning is a good way to bring in readers who wouldn't pick up a Black Widow book, but when he kind of leaves the book, you go, okay, so what story is it going to tell? And the story it's going to tell, I'm semi-interested in. I will read issue 2. But I can't say that I'm so ready for this series. Yeah,
the transition from introducing you to the story to getting to what the story is, that transition was great. The idea of what the story is trying to go for, like what you're talking about, the ideas that it's coming across and stuff, and how it is connecting to the Marvel Universe and addressing things that some people would try to forget, like Secret Empire and stuff like that. It's great that it does that. Just for me, it just, it's one of those classic, just it wasn't for me kind of books, Right. But for somebody else, if you're a Black Widow fan, you're going to I think that you'll love this book.
Right. So I'm going to go unveil this week's rating. I'm going to give this book 2.6 One-Eyed Widows.
2.6 One-Eyed Widows?
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually at 2.75 One-Eyed Widows, which is weird because you liked it. It sounded like you liked it more than I did.
I thought I did, but again, it was one of those books I just didn't give a shit about.
I think it's also because I always forget that we can break down from
Yeah. All right.
You guys know.
All right. I am moving on to Ironheart number 2. It's by writer Eve Ewing, and the artist is Luciano Vecchio, I'm gonna guess. Vecchio.
Yeah, we'll say Vecchio.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you guys remember when we covered issue 1, both of us were pleasantly surprised at how much we liked that back half of that book. So I go, okay, I want to check out this issue 2, see how it follows up to issue 1, see if I like it, because I was pleasantly surprised by issue 1. This one's just more of the same of Riri doing her thing. She's, I think, in Chicago or Detroit. I forget what city she's from. But what I like about this book is it's keeping it small. She's not traveling all over the world doing, putting out big fires and being like this crazy well-known superhero. She's staying local to her area. She's going through school. She's remembering some of the stuff from her past and growing up. She's remembering her history a bit, and I like it. And it's not my favorite thing, but when it gets down to the character interactions, again, as we said in the first issue, I really enjoy the character interactions. I really like when they kind of take a step back from the action and they go, who is Riri Williams? What is she about? How does she view this world? I like that stuff, and for that, I'm going to give this book 2.9 One-Eyed Widows.
Nice.
Not bad.
All right. Well, I read Venom number 10 by Donny Cates.
Because you're not allowed to...
segment. Yeah, I'm not allowed to do a review without a Venom book anymore. At least that's also what Jake says now. And to be honest, the past couple of Venom issues that I've talked about, I hadn't been a huge fan of it. it was okay at most, but this was actually a really good issue. I was kind of worried because the next arc of what Donny Cates was going for, I wasn't like a huge fan of. I really liked that first arc. But this is kind of like addressing that and how it is affecting Eddie and how it's affecting the symbiote. And it also kind of gives you a little more taste of Eddie Brock's origin and a little bit of how he was raised and what his life was like, prior to everything that we know about him. And I thought that was really good. And Donny Cates is still killing it on it, and it's still a great storyline. I'm going to give this one 3.5. Yeah, One-Eyed Widows.
One-Eyed Widows.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Conan the Barbarian #2, Legacy number 277. It's a 12-issue thing that Jason Aaron's doing. So it's by Jason Aaron, and the artist is Mahmoud Asrar. I always feel like I butcher that guy's name, but I really do enjoy his interior works and everything that he does. So this is actually what I think is kind of a prequel to issue 1. I think it actually technically takes place before issue 1, and issue 1 I felt had a very Game of Thronesy feel to me. I really liked it, but I thought, this... I've been rewatching Game of Thrones in preparation for the new season in April, and I go, wow, this one really feels like Game of Thrones. This one does not. I'm actually happy about that. I like that. I go, okay, I'm able to separate this in my mind at least from Game of Thrones. This one is definitely feels a little bit more like ancient cultures back in the day, where more of like the cave people type thing. There's the tribesmen in here, the Picts, who are not really represented as being Conan's favorite people. But what it was really cool is this is just kind of a testosterone fueled book. I really like it. It's fun to read. There's some cool ideas going on about the dynamics, the way these tribes and these other people work, civilized society versus quote-unquote the savages. I really like that, but the thing I found the most fun was these giant ghost snakes that they're fighting here, and the king ghost snake. I really got a kick out of it. It's just a lot of fun. It feels like Jason Aaron doing his thing, having a good time writing it. Jason Aaron feels right at home being able to play with these types of mythologies.
Yeah, that's actually the one thing I was going to say is, like, I've never was a huge Conan fan.
No, me either.
But after reading that first issue, I was like, okay, I like this. And I think the main reason why I like it is you can tell that Jason Aaron really loves this character and that he is legitimately having fun. Like, I guarantee these are like kind of like somewhat stories that he probably wrote when he was a kid. And you just tell that he really enjoys writing this character, and because he enjoys writing it so much, you can actually feel that through his writings.
Yeah,
and I think that's great.
Absolutely, and I feel like what is cool about this is it does feel kind of like a mythological epic. Something that is maybe you're reading the 12 Labors of Hercules, but this is Conan, and there is some very familiar iconography for Conan. If you're a fan of the Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan movies, there are some things in there for you to go, okay, yeah, I can associate this with the Arnold feel. Conan's not drawn like Arnold in the book, at least not in the face and the hair and everything.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's good to differentiate yourself from that. But I do think there's enough for old school Conan fans and new readers like you and I for Conan to jump on here and go, okay, I can get into this. I really like this book. I'm going to give this one 3.25. One-Eyed Widows. Really enjoyed that one.
I'm right there with you on that one. I agree.
All right.
And then I read Marvel Comics Presents #1. It's a new series that they're kind of bringing back, and that Marvel's bringing back, that features 3 different short stories. One of them being a Wolverine story written by Charles Soule, and the pencils are done by Paulo Siqueira. Who cares? Who cares? Josh is bad with names. And it follows Wolverine in World War II, which I thought was a really cool little story. And it's obvious that story is going to kind of like be the thing that connects all these Marvel Comic Presents. It was a good little story. It's kind of cool. I always think it's kind of cool seeing Wolverine in World War II and back in the old wars and stuff like that. Then the second story is following Namor, and following him in World War II, dealing with the effects of Hiroshima. And it's written by Greg Pak, and artist is Tom
Coker.
I want to say Cocker. I like
there's
that
no
better.
other C. It's Coker.
Yeah, but Cocker just has a good ring to it.
Sure.
Yeah, and and he kills it on the pencils. I love it. It kind of has this kind of reminds me of Joel Jones, so I'm going to be a little biased on it. But I mean, it was cool. There's some panels in it. It just has this dark feel to it, which fits perfectly for that time period. And then the last one, I was sitting here going like, oh man, it's a Captain America. It's going to be a World War II. We've already read 15 million stories about Captain America in World War II. And it's written by Ann Nocenti? Yeah. And pencils are done by Greg Land. And it actually does not fit in World War II. And it was a great, touching Cap story that fits more about Cap's morale than it does about his combat styles and his powers and stuff like that. And all in all, for $4.99, it's a pretty big book. And I think it's worth it. It was a good read. All three of those stories were great. The only thing that really kind of bugs me about it is the Namor story just wasn't long enough. I feel like that would be cool to have that one continue. With that all being said, I'm giving this book a solid 3 One-Eyed Widows.
All right, and I read Star Wars I wrote it. Star Wars Age of Republic Special #1. It's got 3 stories, a lot like your Marvel Comics Presents. The first one is Mace Windu and the Weapon. It's written by Ethan Sachs, and the art is by Paolo Villanelli. And it's an interesting little story. It's basically Windu showing off his capabilities, what he can do. You know, when Anakin says as powerful as Master Windu, and I think of Attack of the Clones, it shows what he's able to do with the Force and things like that. But it also shows that he might be ethically at odds with some things with the Jedi Council. So I liked that. The second one was Asajj Ventress and Sisters. It was written by Jody Hauser, and the artist is Carlos Gomez. This one, if anybody is a fan of the Clone Wars animated series, this fits into a very specific part of one episode. If you remember this one episode, this is like right before that episode starts and takes place, and I thought that's a really cool little area to explore with Asajj Ventress, and I thought, you know, as a fan of that series, that's a really cool little thing to do. And the third one is called Captain Rex and Jar Jar Binks and 501+1. It's written by Mark Guggenheim, and the artist is Casper Wingard. And it was fine. It has way too much Jar Jar Binks for my liking, and it's really annoying to have to not only remember the way he speaks and like that's just being forever ingrained in my mind, but having to read it, you know, more than necessary.
That sounds awful.
It really grated on me, and so honestly, that third story really brings the rating down for this, and it is also a $4.99 book. But if you've been picking up the Age of Republic stuff, I'd say go ahead and get it just to complete it. It's not a great. None of these stories are great. They're all a little too short and kneecapped for my liking. But I'd say 2.4 One-Eyed Widows. It's not bad. It's not good or great. But if you're a completionist, might as well pick it up.
Yeah. All
right. Moving on to Fantastic Four issue 6. It's by Dan Slott and Aaron Cooter. And
Cooter.
Yeah. Said it out loud. And this is following directly after the wedding issue with Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters. And
which we didn't get to talk about that much, but it was a great issue.
It was a really good issue.
You want to read a good wedding issue of 2018, pick up Fantastic Four #5.
Yeah, the only real wedding issue, let's be honest,
Right.
because it's the only one that actually delivered on its promise. But anyways, getting back to this, good little issue. I think Dan Slott does such a great job of writing the dialogue between characters. Not so much the action, not so much, I'm going to say it, not so much Doom, at least, you know, judging by this issue. He's not great for the voice of Doom, but with your main 4 cast of the characters, they're really good. The supporting cast, like Alicia, Aunt Petunia, the kids, Franklin Richards and Valeria Richards. I couldn't remember their names for a second. He does a really good job with them. Doom feels very generic, and that's a pitfall a lot of writers fall into, so I can't blame him too much. But overall, it's a good little issue. It's the start of a new little arc, and it's the Herald of Doom Part 1. It's got a great Esad Ribbit cover. It's got a great Alex Ross cover. I'd recommend picking both of those up. But Josh, what were your thoughts?
I agree. That was really weird because we didn't talk about this before we started recording. But the one thing I realized was Dan Slott's great at writing the Fantastic Four. He's great at writing the dialogue between them, and that's one thing that makes that last issue so great, and it's what makes this series so great so far. But then when it gets to Doom, it's a little lackluster. You kind of get a little bummed out. It feels very generic. It feels very, at times, almost a little forced.
Yeah.
But
like, he just written with such gusto all the time. Yeah. And like when you do that, you really take away from the human element of Doom.
It almost makes it seem like a satire, or like as if he's like kind of making him a parody of what Dr. Doom is, and like what you said, it's not an easy character for some people to write, though. For in my opinion, I would imagine that it would not be an easy character at all.
He's a very larger than life character.
Oh yeah, especially because it's a fine line between becoming parody, then it's a very fine line. But I mean, they had some great splash pages. It had some great moments in the book. I guess I was hoping for this to be the beginning of this arc, and we get kind of teased at the end of 5 that there is going to be this battle between Doom and Galactus, that it was going to be this really awesome climactic kind of thing going on, and it might end up getting there, but to me it didn't get there. It just kind of felt like a little bit of a tease. But like what you said, Dan Slott is usually good at writing dialogue between people, and he's good at writing a good story. But when it comes to the climax stuff, like the fights, except for Amazing Spider-Man 800, it usually becomes a little lackluster.
Yeah, and then Aaron Kuder, I like the art. The pencils are a little too bright, maybe not shadowed enough, but I will say he kills it when he's drawing Ben Grimm. When he's doing Ben Grimm, he is
There
doing
is
a great
one
job.
splash page with Doom and Galactus that I really enjoyed. That I just thought was really cool. Just I would love to have it blown up and put up on my wall. But all in all, I mean, it wasn't a bad issue though.
No.
It was. It's definitely still one of us. It's still a solid series, still a solid issue.
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep reading. I'm gonna keep collecting, obviously, especially if not for anything but the Doom covers. I love the Doom covers, and it's Doom and Galactus. So with that, I'm gonna give this one 2.95. I can't quite get it to 3. 2.95. One-Eyed Widows. I almost said Willie. One-Eyed Widows. Willy. But not the best issue and not the best entry into the series so far, but I am excited to see what could happen because it seems like Doom does have a bit of an ace up his sleeve.
For some of the moments that was going on in that splash page and the cover, I'm going to go just a little bit above you. I'm going at 3 One-Eyed Widows.
All right, and the last book we're going to be talking about, as you heard at the beginning, is Invaders, #1. The writer is Chip Zdarsky, and the artist, there's 2 of them, is Carlos Magno with Butch Guice. Not even gonna wait to tell you guys, this was easily the best read of the week so far.
Hands down.
At least what we're covering. We haven't read everything. Obviously, we're just trying to cover some of the big issues for you guys. And Josh and I have actually decided today we're gonna trade off. I'd read a few issues he wouldn't read. He'd read a few issues I wouldn't read. That way we can cover a little bit more for anybody who's interested. But this is easily the best book, and it's unfortunate that I think this is not going to be ongoing, but I think it is going to be a mini-series. But this is just great. This is kind of covering what's going on with Namor, if you remember from Avengers, and you also remember from Chip Zdarsky's Namor from The Best Defense. Yeah, so it's tying into a couple of those things, but it's also it's not an action-packed issue. It's kind of Namor trying to rally Atlantis and all these people to wage war, and Cap is wanting to try and humanize Namor and get back like, hey man, you remember when we fought side by side in World War II? Like, let me help you out. And then you've also got the Human Torch, Jim.
He's trying to make like a book about like the Invaders, the year of the Invaders.
Right, and Cap even says like, I don't know how I feel, how comfortable I feel with how accurate this representation this actually is, because for all the books that are out there that aren't really accurate representations of what happened, this one is going to be very intimate, and it makes him almost a little bit uncomfortable. But it's not an action-packed issue. It's much more. It hinges upon the character interactions in the book, and the history between those characters. And if you know them at all, it's great. And it even references a couple things from the original Fantastic Four run when Namor had amnesia. And I go, this thing is deep cuts, and this is Marvel love at its best.
Yeah, I mean, this whole book it was nothing but digging into the psyche of these characters. You're digging into Namor, but you're also digging a little bit into Flash, into the Human Torch, and it was just really
not Johnny
nice.
Storm,
not Johnny Storm
yeah.
Human Torch. We're talking OG Human Torch.
Yeah.
And you're just they're really digging into the psyche. This is the kind of stuff that like Tom King is probably jerking himself off of, going, why can't I fucking write this kind of PTSD shit? This was really good, and Chip Zdarsky really knows these characters and writes them all very well. I was actually really surprised with how well he wrote these characters, especially when you read some of his other stuff that comes off a little goofy.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Like, Namor is usually not a very popular character amongst people.
And I was going to say, Marvel has a real concerted effort right now to bring him back to prominence with what they're doing. And I'm excited for it because I think they're seeing the success of Aquaman and going, we've got a character like this who was around first, maybe we can do better.
Yeah, and the thing with the character is Namor is such an interesting character because of his history. His history is so rich between being a villain and being a hero and just being a prince and becoming a king.
And a timely comics character.
Yeah, and a timely comics character. I mean, we're talking about a character that, predates Cap.
Yeah, he's from the 40s.
So, I mean, it's a really rich history character, and it's really nice that we're kind of dipping into it. But the great thing is we're getting good stories. I mean, Namor and Avengers is great. The Best Defense Namor wasn't the best issue, but one of the biggest complaints was it felt like we wanted more. It felt like they were trying to jam a bunch in there real fast. This seems like it's carrying on to that. And then also the Namor story that was in the Marvel Comics Presents was a really good one. It's that they're definitely bringing Namor back in a good way.
Right, and then the last thing I really want to say about this book, because I don't want to ruin anything, there is a bit of a twist at the end. There's a character that they introduce and go, whoa, how does this character play into everything?
Right?
And I go, that is one of the things I'm really excited to see coming out of this book, is because I want to know we know that if you know Marvel, you know Namor's history and how he was somewhat retconned later on in his publishing history. And so this character that they kind of hint to, I want to know how this all plays out, and I want to know if this is kind of a contributing factor as to what's going on with Namor now in the present. And I gotta say, guys, this is easily the best book, and I'm gonna give this one 4.1. I was gonna say black-eyed widows, one-eyed widows.
Man, you're so violent.
Yeah.
I'm actually at 4.25 one-eyed widows. I was actually really surprised. And also, if you're gonna go pick up this book, look for the Alex Ross cover. That variant is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a $4.99 issue, but trust us when we say it's a thick book. You're gonna get your bang for your buck out of this. This is not one of those kind of quick, skimpy reads.
Yeah.
You're gonna be reading it for a little while, and I think you're really gonna enjoy it. So that is all we've got for you guys today on this episode of the Marvel installation. We thank you so much for listening, guys. Please let us know if you like it better that we cover more books. Josh covers a few I didn't read. I cover a few he didn't read. We kind of hit a few more of the books that came out this week. But please hit that like button. Let us know in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on any of these books. Did you pick them up? Are you planning on picking them up? Why not? Please let us know in the comments. We'll have a discussion there. Share this with your comic book reading friends. And of course, guys, subscribe to the channel. As always, we are slowly gaining new subscribers and then losing old ones. We're sad to see you guys go, but welcoming the new listeners, guys. Thanks so much.
Imperious Rex.